On the following screen, you can see part of your sample data from the Beak lab. So this is a sample data for the group data. There's a generation 1, generation 2, and generation 3. If you do not have this data, or you have incomplete data, you will need to pause the video and record the data in your graph or your own chart. This next screen is the totals for your group data. Again, if you do not have this data or your data is incomplete, you need to record the totals in your chart or table. You may need to pause the video to make sure that you do so. This is an example of the class data. There's generation 1, generation 2, and generation 3. So all groups information was compiled into one chart. If you do not have this information, you need to pause the video and record it in your table or chart. If you may have partial or incomplete data, you do need to collect all of it. This is the information for the class total chart. So everything was added up, and this is the chart that you have for everything that's in total. Again, you'll need to pause the video and fill in any missing or incomplete information in your table or chart. This chart is the chart where we calculated our number of offspring. At the top it says group data, not class, but we actually did use the class data to try to prevent including any experimental errors or experimental bias. After looking at our data, the class data was more fit and actually had better results. And so here we have our class data. So remember that the numbers that we see in the graph, when we're looking at this, for generation 1, our birds had to collect beans, and for generation 2, they had to collect rice, and for generation 3, they had to collect birdseed. They had to have 4 of each of these, and every 4 would indicate that they had 1 offspring. And so the number that you see, for example, is a spoon, 5 divided by 4. That particular generation, there was 5 beans collected. We divided by number 4 to actually produce 1 offspring. And so we rounded to the nearest whole number as far as that concerned. And so the actual numbers, the end result numbers that we were needing are those ones behind the equal sign. So if you do not have these numbers, you do need to stop the video and fill in the numbers that you are missing. The next thing that some people had questions on was our graphs. And so on the first graph, on the x-axis, you are having to plot beak type. And so the beaks, again, were spoons, forks, plastic knife, and a clothespin. And then the y-axis, you had to plot the number of each food item that was consumed. If you look over to the side here, you can see that you do have a key. And so that key is right here. And so that key is for the actual food, it's for the actual food types that you have. And so to get those food types, we actually pick the top 3 foods, which means that we actually have to go back to our group data. And so looking at our group data, we want to select the groups that had the highest numbers. And so when we look at this and glancing through, for some of them they may be really close, and so you may need to add. But of course, if you first look through, we can see that this group here has high numbers, and that this group has high numbers, and this group has high numbers. And so when we look at that, we actually, if we go back and if we continue to look at these particular data, and we went back and looked at our chart, this first chart is our rice. And this third column is our bird seed. And this column last that we're looking at